Welcome, everyone. We'll just give everybody a few moments to get on this morning's webinar. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful May day. I think it's, we're at least having nice warm weather up in Canada, so not sure about everywhere else in the US and abroad right now, but feels like spring and we're excited for that. So we're thrilled to be welcoming Stan Chiu as our guest speaker today as we dive into collaborative delivery in design and construction. And just before that, I'll go over just a couple of housekeeping items. First off, all of our webinars are available on our website if you'd like to go back and watch previous sessions. I'll have the link to this session up shortly, probably later today. And there's some great different topics there to choose from. So definitely go check that out if you haven't. And I will also get a link in our chat for our next webinar session. This is going to be on June 26th with Felipe Engineer Manriquez. And we're going to be talking all about the different methods of lean tools that are out there, Last Planner, TACT, Scrum and construction. So definitely bookmark this webinar. I'll have a link in the chat so you can go and register and get this on your calendar, and that will be on June 26th. And additionally, Nialli's got a bunch of other events coming up here shortly. We're going to be at Digital Construction Week next week in London. So if you're attending that show, definitely come check us out. We've also got a few events happening locally here in Western Canada, the CIC Innovation Forum in Edmonton in a few weeks. We've also got the Healthcare Infrastructure Forum happening in Western Canada and the Convention Sports and Entertainment Facilities Conference down in Arlington, Texas. So if you're interested in learning more about our technology and coming and checking us out, these are some great shows to come meet our team at. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's guest speaker, Stan Chiu, Director of Integrated Delivery at HDR. So I'll pass the conversation over to Alan and Stan. Thank you so much for joining, Stan.
Right on. Thank you, Laura. Why don't we start first of all, myself, I'm one of the co-founders and chief experience architect at Nialli. So I look at, what the product is and how it gets built, and intimately interested in some of the topics we discuss in the webinar. We're lucky to have Stan here. He's an experienced professional. You may have heard him, listened to him, taken a course delivered by him. But for those that you're new to, Stan, why don't you just describe a little bit how you got into your discipline and how you got to today?
Oh, Alan, thank you, and Laura, thank you. So thank you both so much for having me here. It's been fun getting ready for this, and I'm pretty excited about our time together this morning. I'm Stan Chiu. I'm an architect with HDR. My role is Director of Integrated Project Delivery. My background, I'm an architect. My background is design, and I kind of came up from the trenches at the proverbial drafting board with a lot of late nights and charrettes and some just really got to work on some very amazing projects over my career. I've had some incredible mentors. I've spent a lot of it in California, and a happy consequence of that is back in the mid-2000s, it was just absolutely crazy escalation going on here. And a few very influential people and organizationals began looking at ways of delivering projects that were more reliable, that we could achieve the same quality level without as much drama in a more predictable way. And that integrated approach, that integrated approach was something that collaborative delivery was something that really stuck. And I got, the more I did it. Sutter Health, I would say, is one of the pioneers in that. And they gathered a number of us together and said, look, we're going to try delivering projects in a very different way. And it's going to require a lot of learning and commitment on your part. If you want to do it, we'll learn together. And if you don't, that's okay too. And I jumped in, and I've kind of been in that ever since.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And interesting times, I'm sure, when you're taking a new approach. One of the things that, like, in that area that you introduced us to was the MacLeamy Curve. And I think it'd be great if you could say a little bit about that, maybe just break that down I don't know if we have an image of the MacLeamy curve that we can bring up. Just to share that, let me just flip a couple
I
switches
love
here.
that curve, and I got to work for Patrick at one point, so it was neat. I first got exposed to the curve, and the big idea here is that you see some colors, 3 different lines: a red, a green, a blue, and a black. And the black line represents the typical amount of work, the typical workforce on a project over time. So the left is pre-design, the right is construction and operation. So typically what we experience is that you start with a small team, it ramps up, and this is showing it peaking during CDs. This is from Patrick Works for HOK, so it's a it's from a design standpoint, but the team peaks during CDs and then falls off, and that's common. The red and the green line represents the ability of the project to tolerate change, and over time, surprise, it's harder and harder for the project to change. To move the footprint 2 feet in pre-design is basically, I'm sorry, the green line, there you go, thanks. The green line is the cost of the change. To move the footprint 2 feet during pre-design is no cost implications at all. To do it during construction would be absolutely catastrophic. So as time goes on, your cost to change goes up. The red represents the ease of making change, your ability goes down. So big thinking here is if you could shift that curve to the left, as represented by the blue line, you would be able to, you take that knowledge that if the curve in some ways represents knowledge, if you could position that knowledge where it could do the most good, further left where you can make those changes and you are able to make those changes, then things would be a lot smoother for everybody. So it's a simple idea. The reality of doing this is really complex, and I would say that design build or IPD or collaborative delivery are different versions of essentially even pre-construction assistance. Even those are different versions of trying to achieve what's shown on these curves.
All right. So in essence, it's easier, less costly to move pixels than concrete. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Well put, Alan. Well put. And the trick is, I mean, it's easy to say, but hard to do. So.
Well, yeah, and that's, I think, a topic we should dig into, because like you say, yeah, this makes sense. Now what? And you have a lot of experience in trying to do this. So how do you coordinate the work between quite different groups, really? The people that are, actually doing the construction and the people that are designing what's going to be constructed. But like, how do you coordinate that work? Like, what processes or tools, in your experience, work for you?
Well, Ellen, maybe if it's okay, maybe I'll answer that kind of from 2 different directions. And
Absolutely.
At a very high level, the traditional design process was more kind of tip to tail. The constructors would come on once the project is defined, and they had kind of a clear path of what to do. So the challenge with the integrated model is you're doing work concurrently. So the bad news is there's less clarity around what the final product is going to be when the team that's going to build that product comes on. So that's tough. The good news is all of the information that team has about constructability, about how to build this thing, can suddenly become part of the design process. So there's that wrinkle, that ability to incorporate constructability and, let's say, cost understanding into the early stages really streamlines design in an amazing way if you take advantage of that. And a simple kind of technical construct would be to understand, to use constructability, to use the opening of the project as I'm just going to throw some jargon out, so apologies for that, but to pull significant milestones off the opening of the project to determine what needs to happen when, not how, but what needs to happen when, what the milestones are. So a simple process would be to use opening of the building, pull back, create milestones, and then once you have those milestones, get the team together to understand, okay, what are the tasks that are needed to accomplish the milestone? And it's a little bit, it takes some patience and a different mindset, because we're working we're working side by side with a groups of people are working side by side that are used to working not concurrently but sequentially. So it definitely takes a different mindset.
Yeah, I think I definitely understand that because most people are saying, okay, it's done. Here's the package. Go get bids, start scheduling, work on supply. And instead, you're saying, like, you're talking a little bit about an organic type of
Yes.
process rather than sequential. I like the way you describe that.
Well, the
So,
truth is, and Alan, just building on what you just said, that traditional, that legacy model where we architects, designers define it, and then you go get bids and then you build it. The reality is there's a massive do loop in, say, 95% of all projects where it's over budget or over schedule, and it gets sent back to design so that
right.
designers can value engineer it. And that's a dirty secret of the typical way of doing things.
Right, and then it's such a big task to say start cutting out 1 million here, 1 million there, 1 million there. I mean, it's like,
And the
crazy.
fingers are pointing, and instead of taking advantage of everybody's skills, it very easily becomes adversarial, a high stress environment.
So speaking of that, I mean, I can't remember who said it, but they said if we both have the same thought or same idea, one of us isn't needed. And it like it from that perspective, like how do decisions get made? Like what are some of the ways that, the design and construction, all the different players have a different focus, different criteria for looking at a particular item. So how do you go about just working?
Well, there's a mind shift
Oh,
from me making a decision based on my experience and intuition to a group. It's a little bit like a board of directors making a decision about what's best for the
mm,
enterprise, what's best for the organization, based on a set of established criteria. So
mm,
in most of these projects, for sure in IPD, one of the first things you do is you create conditions of satisfaction. And I apologize for all the jargon associated with this, but you figure out what the true north is. What the real. I've got a client who says if this is the answer, what was the question? What is
mm.
it that you're trying to do? So as a group, you come together and you build that understanding. They call it conditions of satisfaction. How do you know you did it right? And then at each decision point, leadership or people, it doesn't matter. The people who are involved in the decision are testing the alternates. There's always more than one choice in a decision, right? Testing the alternates against those criteria, against the conditions of satisfaction. So it's less what do I think is right and more what do we think best fits the needs, the guiding principles of the project. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty big mindset. It's not me alone in a cave figuring out which way to turn the nursing unit. I can do that and then bring it to the group and refer to the conditions of satisfaction, but ultimately it's driven by those conditions of satisfaction. And then just one thing to throw in there, it's all done according to the milestones of the project. So another mindset is not making the best decision, but making the best decision per the needs, per the schedule of the project. So if you and I are charged with it and the date is, say, Friday, I think that's the 30th, it's what is the best decision that we can make on May 30th. So
Right. Can you give a few examples of like those criteria just so we can get in our minds what that looks like? Like from a
we're working
project
on a
that you've been
project in
working
San
on.
Diego right now, and this
Okay.
is a great example. There are a few different sites. We're early in the project, a few different sites, some of which are very close to a freeway, so it has great exposure. And because of one of the conditions of satisfaction is exposure to the freeway, the presence
Ah,
on the freeway. Another condition of satisfaction is patient safety, of course, and it's got some EP labs, some complicated stuff that really needs to be adjacent to, from a safety standpoint, the closer it is to existing EP labs, the better it is for the patient. So
ah,
the trade-off that we're working through right now is, of course, existing labs are not near the freeway. There's an opportunity to have the building near the freeway. So how do you balance those two things? And that's a great thing where conundrums make for good design. So in this case, there's a conundrum. There appears there is a trade-off between proximity to existing program and freeway presence.
hmm. Interesting. So I imagine, do you ever use some of the, like, what are some of the techniques like CBA or some of those other target value? Do you want to talk about some of those?
Two classic ones. You touched on one, CBA. Choosing by advantages is a really nuanced system for taking into account multiple criteria, multiple factors that could appear to be conflicting. So CBA is the right tool for this decision because it's very nuanced and subtle. A3s are a great decision-making tool, and they're great for documenting. But both of these tools are really as much about making the best decision as they are about getting the team on board with the direction that's moving forward. And they're kind of somewhat predictable, reliable. So you can use both of those to say on the 30th, Alan and Stan will make the decision as to whatever the decision is.
Right.
So those are two classic ones, and they seem a little technical, especially CBA. But I'd encourage anybody who digs into it. It's really a mindset about it's not my decision; it's my evaluation of these alternates against these criteria.
Absolutely quantifying decisions. So for yourself and myself, we have a design background, so we get the conflicting criteria. We get some of that. What does it take to get the whole team that is generally not comfortable in that environment? I think I mentioned to you before we were talking of constantly being wrong in a way,
Yeah.
or trying to, there's more wrong answers than right ones. Like, how do you, like, it's a bit of a mental shift where all our life we're taught to be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how do
Yeah.
you deal with that whole notion of maybe there's some discomfort in some people on the team in being in that kind of decision-making environment?
Well, yeah, Alan, I love these are such good questions. There's the experience. I love what you just said. I've been wrong so many times as a designer because I've seen, you see that part of getting to right is being wrong along the way. And
Mm,
I think that can drive a certain humility where if that
mm,
traditional process of design, engage construction, put it out on the streets, go into that VE cycle, value engineering cycle, if those of us that have experienced that a lot, you get to understand, okay, I do not have as much cost information about the project as the people who are out in the market bidding this stuff. So the ability, if you can get that information, if we can get that information while we're designing, we're going to make much better collective
mm.
decisions. In a way, it's hard to remember. I'm getting to be an old guy, so that was a while ago. But I think letting go of that belief or that need to control and realize that, okay, these are things I may have thought I was controlling that, but I really wasn't, because it's stuff that is not my area of expertise. And
Right.
being able to shift your mind from, all right, I'm on the hook for everything, to no, I'm going to bring my best skills and find partners who have complementary skills, and together we're going to do amazing stuff. I mean, that's
Mm.
where the magic really happens.
Yeah, the together is pretty important. But you just touched on something about knowledge that you need or information somebody else needs. How do you share knowledge effectively? Like how do you, I mean, I know, there's BIM models, everybody doesn't have access. There's costing information, everybody doesn't have access. There's supply chain. How do you ensure that everybody has the information they need to be able to, like you say, contribute to the best of their ability? Like, what are some of the ways that you've tried to do that?
There's an evolving set of let's call them better practices, right? Continuous
Okay.
improvement. It's never best, but it's always better. I'd say the better practices now revolve around target value design. And a key aspect of it that gets lost is there are probably a couple things. One is to break the project down into smaller pieces and have cross-functional teams assigned, driving each of those pieces. So if you imagine in a hospital, well, in the project that I'm on right now, the enclosure is a completely independent team from the structure, which is independent from the interiors, which is independent from the site. So you've got a cross-functional team, designers, builders, owners associated with each one of these components. So that's good. So not everybody needs to be in deep on everything. And then the art is sharing the information between those teams.
Right.
So target value design, you got components, cross-functional teams, and the magic happens. We usually would call them integration events. The magic happens. Your question is, how does everybody have the right amount of knowledge about everything that's going on without dragging everybody through all of the sausage making in all parts of the project? And the integration events are kind of where the magic happens. And those are opportunities for each component to share with each other what their recommendations are, and either share or ask for impacts to the other components. So Alan, if you and we're part of a team that we're working on the enclosure, we would say, these are the systems we looked at. We compared them with the criteria that we all established. Our recommendation is that this one goes forward. It has some structural implications. Are there any other implications? And that the idea is to lightly share everything with everybody. And then very deeply, the component teams are deep within their own components. And then for this project up here in San Francisco, it's all backed up by a database that everybody can get to. So anybody can get to everything. But the art is not dragging everybody through everything, because you would never get anywhere. So
yeah, that makes tons of sense. So a nuts and bolts question. You say there's a database everybody can get at, like it's very virtual. Like I remember days when there were walls filled with things. You knew where the design was. You knew what state it was at. You knew the state of the structural work or whatever the case. Like what's working best in your mind in terms of let's see, hybrid, physical and virtual? Where's that heading? And you call it better practice. I like that. Not necessarily best, but
well, there is no substitute for being physically together. The trust, the relationships, everything just happens faster. So I'm in a big room environment right now. There are probably 300 people here, and we have the drawings posted so you can see what's going on with the design. We have the schedule posted so you can see what's going on. We have safety stuff going, the jobs under construction, so you can see what's going on with safety. I mean, it's a little bit, it's somewhat old school in that way, where there are the visual products of the work are there. There's a structural model you can take apart and put back together, so you can see a sequence of how things go. Having said that, a lot of people are virtual here. In our integration events, in our big room meetings, it's probably 3/4 physical and 1/4 virtual. So we have worked hard to put together dashboards that replicate a lot of the stuff that's on the wall, but at the end of the day, a lot of the information is printed and pinned to the wall.
Right.
Yeah, it really does help. I'd say, for this project, Tuesday through Thursday are the big days where people are on site. Mondays and Fridays tend to be a little lighter, and there tends to be more hybrid work, because that's just the reality of the world that we live in.
Right. Now, you mentioned two things, the physicality, not just in the visualization, but also in people face to face having discussions. And you mentioned the word trust. Let's just look at the softer side of how to get, our title is moving from silos to synergy. Talk a little bit about trust and the people side of this process, the culture of moving to synergy.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's we are intentional about it here. We do study action teams, which is a fancy word for book club. We read Speed of Trust together and talked about what does building trust look like, and how do you evaluate it. So we talk about it. We did an offsite retreat here. I think back in October, where we spent a lot of time doing. We started the retreat with and Felipe, your next guest, kind of led that segment. But we started with a board, a scale 1 to 5, and put your name on a post-it and just post your level of trust for the rest of the people in the group today.
Oh, wow.
So I mean,
wow.
and then we went through all these exercises and then repeated that at the end of the day. So we're really intentional about, look, trust drives team performance, and that we're intentional about building it. Now the reality is, the shoulder to shoulder time is really a key part of that, and getting to know each other, establishing personal relationships really is just a big deal. We serve lunch here quite a bit, so breaking bread together and just sitting and hearing about Memorial Day plans, or what's going on with each other's families is a key piece of it. So
wow,
it's very, I mean, in some ways it's very old school.
Well, it's healthy, right? I mean, we went through a time when we all had to be virtual, and we kind of got nervous about being together. How are we going to do this again? There's like a resurgence because we now value it, which is quite, and that's what I'm hearing from you. I'm just going to give a reminder to the group. We have a Q&A section in the meeting that you can drop questions in, and if in 5 or 10 minutes we'll start getting to those. We have 5 minutes. We'll start getting to the questions. Stan, is there anything else that we should touch on in this this topic of moving from, or moving to these cross-functional collaboration? I'll just call it generally. Any other items that we might have skipped over?
I mean, Alan, you've really led us on such a great journey here. I mean, this has been pretty rich. Lean and Toyota, has a big sort of driver of all of this, and if you dig through Toyota's website, their two fundamental guiding principles are respect for people and continuous improvement, learning, the idea that we can always do better, and that's such a really humble approach. It's not, we're going to build the greatest cars in the world or return the greatest shareholder value. It really is. We, respect for people, seek knowledge, go to where the person who has the knowledge is the person who should be involved in this. And then really we learn as much as we can. We do retrospectives here pretty continuously in general on these projects to improve things. How can we do better next time? How can we do better next time? So
right on. So I've got a question that's in the chat. Somebody's saying, describe the big room that you have created for large teams, 300 people. I mean, I was there. I was lucky enough to have a tour of what you were doing. Why don't you try and describe it, and then I'll maybe add a couple, my first impression after you describe.
Yeah, I mean,
describe that room.
This particular space is in a converted garage, and it's nicer than it seems. But you can see, I mean, I'm sitting under a duct and everything back here. It's like a beehive. It's open workstations, somewhat surrounded by meeting areas and a VDC, a BIM cave, we call it. And you walk in and you see the models of the project, and you see dashboards and schedules and that kind of stuff. And there's an energy here. It's organized. This is in San Francisco, so it's playfully organized by seats. I sit on post. I was playfully organized by streets. The seats are organized by seats, and those streets are cross-functional. So I sit next to a builder, and so we're organized by component teams. So I sit with the rest of my component team, and it's great. We've got these little neighborhoods that are very rich and diverse, and with backgrounds and skill sets and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of buzz. Would be nice to have more space here. When we do our big room integrations, it's a mix of people standing up front and people kind of standing at stations. We're packed in. We're short on toilets. which is awkward in some ways, but in other ways, you get to know people you're standing in line
Standing
with.
in line.
This happens on like a daily basis. And I think that the success that we've had on this job, a teeny little bit, is because we're standing in line for the bathroom next to each other.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a little color that, I walked in and this is basically the project has taken over part of the parking garage and done this amazingly huge renovation. And you walk in and it's like you're in an office building, you're in a parking garage and then you end up in this office building. It's just absolutely, stunning, the investment in what you were talking about, bringing people together.
I mean, there's carpet on the floor, and this is one of the uglier rooms here, but it's great. I mean, the milestones of the project are hung from the ceiling, so you can kind of see, I think it goes about 60 feet. You can see the milestones up until first patient. So.
Right. Yeah, perfect. So another question that's come in. So someone's interested in the dashboards that you create for the remote or virtual people.
I'm sorry to step on you. One thing, there are a fair number of monitors in this environment too. So it's physical and virtual. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So what are the dashboards? Like what's in them? Give an example of a dashboard that kind of represents the big room information that's been summarized, or between components, or just give an example of a dashboard. What's on there?
Well, it's a little geeky, but PPC, plan percent complete, is something that we track pretty carefully. We're working hard to more completely roll out LPS. It's an imperfect thing on this project, as with most projects. Nonetheless, we track PPC for the tasks that we've. So I'm going to back up from that milestone stuff that I talked about before. It's a very set in stone, very important understanding for the entire project. And then the tasks that get you to a milestone are somewhat flexible. You create a plan, and usually it's not more than 6 weeks. You create a plan to get to a milestone, and you adjust that as you need to. We've got a really big submission going in on Friday, and our phase pull plan, we were adjusting that probably 2 to 3 times a week. We were shifting things around. And we keep track of tasks that are complete and tasks that are not complete. So your question is about dashboards, and a really simple one is plan percent complete. Of the tasks that day or that week that you were scheduled to do, how many did you get done and how many did you not get done? Or not me specifically, but the component team. And then an important element of that is to track the reasons why you didn't get it done, the variance codes. So that would be an example of a dashboard. We saw capacity as a variance code here, which led us to really move staff around and be sure that we had the staff to be able to do the tasks. Those are middle indicators that we use to
indicators
organize the project.
Yeah, indicators is a good word because it's really a summary of the health of the project. Are we doing what we said we'd do, and what's getting in the way? It's typical. Most of us that have been in, development or construction, whatever. It's that was a good answer.
Yeah, and we're seeing that for this submission. At one point, we were statusing the week leading up to Memorial Day. We were statusing things on a daily basis just because it was so critical. So you can see failures, and there's there's really precise, clear language here. Some of it sounds kind of big and scary, but you could see failures as they were happening. So
So you mentioned the Toyota way, and I'm going to just sort of segue into a question that came in. What are some of the changes in leadership skills or behavior that are needed to lead in this new collaborative environment? I mean, you need both leaders and followers, but I think this question's about leading. What are the type of characteristics that are required?
Boy, Alan, I absolutely love this question, and I think about it a lot. It's there's kind of a great cartoon showing 3 different leadership styles, and the first one we know really well. It's command and control, and there's a stick figure standing on a box with a megaphone telling everybody what to do. And that's kind of sort of that's like the old school military. That's kind of the legacy,
Sage on the stage, kind of.
leadership style in design and construction. And maybe design is the one with the megaphone in the beginning, and maybe construct is the builders are the ones with the microphone at the end, but the megaphone at the end. But that's one person figures it all out, maybe with some help of a team, and then that one person tells everybody what to do. And the problem with that, the military doesn't run that way anymore. The problem with that is you're not able to, for a complex endeavor where things change, like tariffs show up or steel is laid, or any of our projects in construction, I'd say even a kitchen remodel is full of surprises and unexpected things. And so creating a plan and then browbeating everybody into following the plan is it's ineffective. There's another leadership style where people are doing things kind of independently and, trying to plug into each other. The lean way, I think the collaborative model really is almost a facilitative leadership style. The third panel of that cartoon shows somebody saying, well, everybody holding hands and someone pulling them up the mountain saying, hey, follow me and we'll figure this out together, and that's really it. And you touched on it lightly, even in your questions, but cultivating the followers as leaders is a key piece of this as well. It's not one person or a small group of people may facilitate things, but the leading, the best way to do something is coming from the people who are directly involved in doing it. That's that respect for people, part of the Toyota guiding principles.
Right on. Yeah, nice. Good question from Kathleen. Age-old challenge of seeing actual, versus like as built versus planned, or actual versus planned. Like, do you have a process of understanding that as you go along, and like how do you transfer these project details with the owner?
Oh, okay. This is probably on a drawing standpoint, kind of documenting things as we go.
What's been planned, what's been built. It's digital details of the as built, and how do these get understood?
Well, we work very hard. This job up here is big and complicated, and we work very diligently to have the build condition match the design condition as much as we can. We're doing a digital twin, so we've got a very, very engaged virtual design construction VDC group. We're doing finite coordination, so we're modeling this project at an extremely granular level to minimize changes as we go forward, and we're making those changes as when those changes happen, because they do. We're making them in the model as close to real time as we can in the model, so that the model is keeping up.
Are you using any image type of techniques or capture on the job site and matching the digital twin? Like, what type of technologies are you trying to use there?
Well, I'll back up and then circle back to that question. As an example, kind of a little related to that, not on the job site, but upstream, we've got a fly-through scheduled for Friday where we're going to review all of the essential rooms in a floor that's going to be released for finite coordination and the group is the owners, the trade partners, the contractors, the designers, everybody. We're in the BIM cave looking through the model to point out any conflicts and be sure the cross-discipline team, the whole team is in agreement with how the thing is going to be built. So that's kind of on the, let's call it the QA side. People talk about QA putting the quality in, and then QC checking to see if it's there. So on the QC side, you're asking about, tracking things as we build, and that's still, we're just coming out of the ground. So we haven't done any of it here, but we're anticipating we'll be using the laser spot clouds and those sorts of things.
Oh, it's neat. Look forward to seeing that. So I love this question, and it's about scalable. I mean, you're involved in some pretty large, complex project, but how scalable is the process that we've been talking about to smaller projects like 3 to 8 months in duration, or fast-paced project, and they're looking for suggestions on that. Like, how can you take the Toyota way and some of the the integrated project concepts you're talking about? how do you, how does that apply to a smaller project, or how could it apply?
Well, when I remodeled our house, which is an
Speaking,
extremely small project, and certainly relative to this sort of thing, I kind of went down the traditional path a few times, creating drawings and talking to contractors and that kind of stuff. And I ended up connecting with a contractor. I ended up connecting with a contractor that had I don't want to make the story too long, but anyway, I ended up connecting with the contractor, and instead of and really just using straight up target value design, I said, this is my budget, these are my aspirations.
mm,
What would it look like for us to work together so that the aspirations match the budget, and I'll design according to what can be built. And I'm very flexible. I've got some flexibility. I can choose different floor materials, I know what the number is, but the things to
right.
get there, maybe it's bamboo, maybe it's maple, those sorts of things. I can vary that according to you and your market knowledge, and is this something you'd want to get involved in? And we ended up having this great relationship, and we got so much value out of so much little budget by being able to kind of the designer nimbly adjust to market conditions. And for a lot of the project, we were tracking progress with Post-its. Okay, what do you think is going to happen this week? What needs to happen? And
Oh,
I think
wow.
that really
Nice.
helped both of us. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a great example because it makes it very clear. First of all, it's synergy. You're working
oh
together. You're not just saying, "Here, build this. Good luck." Right? Like
yeah.
it's a relationship that you've built and you've been talking about. And so that's great advice for even a small team, quick project, short project.
I would say any scale to get the maximum value, the maximum quality out of a certain amount of money, that the collaborative delivery is the way to go.
mm, yeah, exactly. So there's a question for you, and in your experience, like, can you recommend a book on building teams? And I don't know if there's any on specifically construction teams, but there's lots of books on teamwork. Any favorites that stick out?
Um, we used to, it's been a while, but we used to sometimes give The Elegant Solution, a Matthew May book. May went to Toyota, worked there. He's a really good writer,
Hmm.
and writes about their mindset and how they approach things. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's called The Elegant Solution. So that's a pretty good, it's not like a layperson's book, but it's not, a lot of lean stuff is super technical and about
Yeah,
manufacturing. And
that's right.
that's a really important part of it. But the cultural piece and the mindset piece is probably equally important. That would be one
Perfect.
that I'd recommend. Another one, product development for the lean enterprise. Michael Kennedy that's a good book. It's a little geekier, but it looks at, I'm a designer, so it looks at Toyota's design process and how they organize their teams, and some of the things, some of the things that we talked about today are straight out of that book. In the early days when we were bringing these techniques to design and construction, that was our Bible. Product Development for the Lean Enterprise by Michael Kennedy.
All right, perfect. I see something from Kathleen that I missed earlier. We advocate for providing digital documents. Well, I think you've answered this. Um, Providing digital documents instead of hard copy. Does your project do that? I think you've talked about that. I mean, even your BIM cave, I saw that where you do the mutual view and you've got the actual, level of design, level of completion, clashes all up on the wall. So it's really clear. And of course, it's, virtually accessible as well. But,
Yeah.
I
No,
think we've
we
touched on
advocate for
that.
the same thing. And we do, even in our we do truncated, so they're intense QC reviews that are mostly digital. We'll do these physical super plots to be able to follow along and mark off, but even those reviews are mostly digital,
All right.
like the flight through on Friday.
All right, perfect. So we're pretty much at time, and I know that you are on the job there and expected to be working, and you've taken time to talk to us. Has been extremely interesting and valuable. So if there aren't any last questions, we'll just give a second, see if anybody has something for us. Well, I think we're okay. I don't see anything pop up. So I don't know, Laura, if you want to make any last.
Or can I just one closing thing for me? Laura and Alan, thank you so much for this time. I think that you're by hosting, there's so much opportunity for improvement in our industry, and I think you're by hosting this, that's a pretty good piece of it. The work that you're doing too as part of Nialli is fundamentally getting people to be able to communicate with each other. You know, and it's documenting the decisions and agreements, and then tracking the progress of those agreements as we go forward. That's fundamental. This is maybe the major organ of design and construction. So thank you so much for doing that work.
All right. Well, it's very kind of you to say. It's a pleasure talking with thought leaders and especially those that are willing to give their time to share. So, and we've got a comment in the chat saying, thank you, Stan, for all your contributions to our industry.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really nice. That's a heart.
We're all in it together. We're all in it together.
Exactly. So, Laura, I don't know if you want to close out with any statements, and we'll let everybody get back on with their day.
Nothing from my end. Just thank you, everybody, for taking the time. And thank you, Stan, for all of the wisdom and advice that you've shared with everyone. And we hope that everybody will join us for our next session on June 26th. So thank you, everyone.
Felipe is awesome. Yeah, Felipe is awesome.
Well, you're a tough act to follow, but we'll give it a go.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.